The Disney princesses and their corresponding Disney princes are among some of the most iconic characters ever created by the Walt Disney Company. And today we're talking about none of them. Wow, what an intro. Hello everybody, Nicky Marra here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you've all had a fabulous week and are ready for yet another fun ranking video. And this week I'm coming at you from my floor because I didn't feel like cleaning my room. But am I going to let my not feeling productiveness prevent me from bringing you a video? Of course not! As all of you on the channel know that I am very regularly uploading on Fridays at 5 p.m. and that is not stopping anytime soon. But yes, friends, from the tagline of my video, the Disney princesses and the Disney princes often get a lot of limelight from within the Disney company, appearing not only in theme parks regularly, but also being some of the more exalted characters by the company. And well, I think it's relatively safe to say that there are a lot of Disney royalty that go rather unnoticed. And so today, friends, we are going to pull back the curtain and examine some of Disney's more forgotten princes and princesses. But if you are new to the channel, hi, my name is Nicky Marra and I am a Disney content creator. I got my start over on TikTok, but have joined the YouTube community and have been loving making long form videos for you guys, of which of course I have brand new videos coming out every single Friday at 5 p.m. So make sure to hit subscribe down below so that way you never miss out on any future magic from me. And likewise, if you'd like to find me on any of my other social medias, my handle is at Nicky Marra with 2 Y's and 2 R's, and you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat for even more magic. And as of posting this, I have just hit my 1 year of posting regularly on YouTube. I have been here every single Friday at 5 p.m. and I have been absolutely loving making all of these long form videos for you guys. YouTube was never a thing that I ever saw in my life journey, but I'm so glad that it stumbled in, because even if nobody watched these videos, I would have so much fun sitting in my room talking to a camera about Disney, because as you all know, when I talk about Disney, I can talk about Disney. So yes, I just wanted to say, if you've been here from the beginning or if you're brand new, welcome and thank you so much. I have been loving making these videos for you guys, and all of the love on them has just been a cherry on top of a perfect year. But I think that's enough blabbing. You all came here for some forgotten Disney princes and princesses, and that's just what we're gonna get into. But as always on the channel, I do have some brief disclaimers and then conditions for the list that we are going to be putting together today. So feel free to stick around for those. But if you would like to just jump right into our ranking video, then you can head right to this timestamp. First and foremost, for the disclaimers, I am not associated with the Walt Disney Company, and therefore I do not speak for the brand or the company. Any and all opinions in this video are just my own and do not reflect those of the brand or the company. But secondly, I welcome any and all opinions surrounding these wonderful Disney characters down in my comment section. Whether you're giving voice to a character that maybe didn't make it onto my list, or even just voicing your opinion on where another character landed on my personal list, I love getting to hear all of your thoughts. So if you at home happen to think of a forgotten prince or princess that didn't make it onto my list, make sure to give them some credit down in the comments. But thirdly, for the disclaimers, I do want to give a brief spoiler warning for all of the Disney movies that we're going to be talking about today. As for a part of our talking points, I am going to mention their, brief summary plot and how they are royal. And so again, if you just don't want a specific Disney movie spoiled for you, then you can just jump right on up to the next number on my list today. But next, friends, we are moving into the conditions for today's list. In order to make it into today's list, the characters must fit one of 3 criteria. They must either A, hold the title of prince or princess at some point during their movie, 2, be a significant other to a character that holds the title of prince or princess at some point in their movie. As we know, not every Disney princess's significant other is a prince. And so we are going to include the significant others in today's list, much like the Disney princes do. Or C, they must be a retired Disney princess. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, when the official Disney princess lineup was originally created, there were some members that unfortunately had their membership rescinded. Whether they just didn't fit the overall direction that Disney wanted to take the princess lineup, or whether they clashed with other princesses in the lineup, we're gonna get into all of it as we talk through the individual characters, but we will be including on today's list rescinded members of the Disney princess lineup. And while the characters on today's list must fit one of those 3 criteria, we're gonna bend the rules a little bit for high members of society, so Just expect that a little bit. And in addition, while they must fit one of those 3 criteria, they cannot be an official member of the Disney princess lineup, nor can they be a primarily marketed love interest to an official Disney princess. And as one more little condition for the list, I am going to be putting a limit of 25 characters on my list of forgotten princes and princesses. As I've said in previous videos, I like to keep my lists on the somewhat shorter side so that way I can actually talk about each character a little bit and not feel like I have to rush through each of them with a giant long list. So I hope you're okay with that. I'm okay with that, but I hope you are. And I think I've covered my ground with all of the conditions. And so with that, friends, before we jump into our list, I do want to go through the brief talking points we're going to be sure to touch on for each individual character, and then I promise we will get into the list. As for the talking points, we're going to be first identifying the character and who they are. Next, we're going to be talking about the movie in which they can be found. We're then going to be talking about the impact that the character has on their story. We're going to be talking about what makes them royal. And finally, I'm going to give my brief opinion on each of these princes or princesses. But friends, with all of that out of the way, I believe we are ready to finally jump into my official ranking of Disney's forgotten princes and princesses. So if you're ready to jump into the list, then sit back, relax, grab yourself a snack and a drink, and let's get into my ranking list. We are starting today's list all the way down at the bottom at number 25. Who's the character? Ranjan. Now, the adorable character Ranjan can be found in The Jungle Book 2, which was released in the year 2003. And yes, surprise, I am including sequel movies on today's ranking video. Now, I hear what you might be saying. Ranjan isn't exactly a prince, so what makes him rank on today's list? Well, we're gonna get into it, don't you worry. For the impact on his story, Ranjan is almost like an adoptive brother to Mowgli in the sequel, and he's a character that really looks up to Mowgli, so it's kind of cute to get to see their dynamic play out. But he definitely serves as like a relatively main character in his movie, so we get to see quite a bit of him. But as for his royal status, what makes this character royal? Well, while he's not officially royal, he does hold very high status within his village. And this is due to the fact that his father is the leader of the village. And hey, I'm just gonna say, if we can include Pocahontas and Moana as official Disney princesses with their fathers being leaders of their villages, I think it's safe to say that Ranjan can get prince status. But as for my opinion of this character, I think he's really cute. He's adorable. Not amongst one of my favorite forgotten princes or princesses. However, I do think he is relatively forgotten, seeing as The Jungle Book is a pretty good sequel to an animated Disney film, of which I have an entire video ranking the direct-to-DVD sequels, which I can link above for you. But yes, with The Jungle Book 2 being one of my more favored sequel movies, I do think that Ranjan still doesn't get the credit he deserves. I think he's a really fun character. So I definitely wanted to include him on today's list, but he's not gonna rank nearly towards the top. Next, we're gonna move on up to number 24 on my list. Another sequel character. At number 24 is John Rolfe. Now, I hear what you're saying, Disney Nicky. John Rolfe is the love interest to Pocahontas in the sequel. Yes, you are correct, but if you remember correctly in my conditions, I said the primarily marketed love interest to an official Disney princess. As we all know, the official original animated movies are the true canon. And so if we're talking about the primarily marketed love interest to Pocahontas, well, that would be John Smith from the original animated movie. And so John Rolfe is okay to be included on today's list. Now, as we just said, John Rolfe can be found in the sequel to the movie Pocahontas, which is Pocahontas 2, Journey to a New World, which released in the year 1998. And as for the impact he has on his story, John Rolfe helps Pocahontas to navigate the new world. And, like we said, he also serves as her brand new love interest. Now, as for his royal status, while he is not royal by birth, John Rolfe actually does end up as the love interest to Pocahontas, who is an official Disney princess, so I guess this could officially bring him into the Disney Prince lineup? If we include sequels as canon. I certainly don't, and that's totally up to you if you do, but I think it's safe to say that he can be on today's list. And as for my overall opinion, he's not nearly one of my favorites. Yeah, I think towards the bottom of the list is where he belongs. But with that, we're gonna move on up to number 23 on my list. Who is the character? Feline. Now, the character Feline can be found in the 1942 Disney animated film Bambi. And as for her impact on the film Bambi, she is Bambi's love interest and his eventual mate. And again, I can hear you saying in the comments, but Disney Nikki, she's a deer. Well, technically a doe. So what is she doing on my ranking of forgotten princes and princesses? Well, if you will remember correctly, there is a certain status that Bambi holds. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on the list today. But by being his love interest, she actually does gain some relatively royal status in nature. While I love Feline personally, and I think she is a wonderful character, I do think there are a lot of other stronger characters on today's list, and we're going to get to talk about her a little bit more when we mention another character on today's list. That's totally a spoiler, but it's okay. With that, we're gonna move on up to number 22 on my list, who's a really fun one. At number 22 is Nancy Tremaine. Now, Nancy Tremaine, you might remember, comes from the 2007 Disney film Enchanted. And Nancy happens to be a character of two worlds, both ours and also, eventually, of Andalasia. As for her impact on the film, Nancy originally dates Robert, who you might remember eventually ends up falling in love with Giselle, but Nancy later marries Prince Edward, which ends up making her the Princess of Andalasia. Played by the absolutely iconic Idina Menzel, who also happens to lend her voice to an official Frozen queen. I think it's very safe to say that Nancy immediately has, like, princess power, considering, well, she does end up as the love interest to a prince, but also with Idina Menzel cementing herself in Disney iconography, I think it is also safe to say that Nancy Tremaine is surrounded in princess energy. Especially in the sequel, Disenchanted, where she gets her very own power ballad. Love Power is very vocally impressive, and I really think it helps to add a ton to Nancy Tremaine's character arc. Nancy Tremaine is definitely a princess, and I would definitely argue more forgotten. But I think she deserves a lot more credit. This character is actually super, super fun. The next, friends, we're gonna move on up to number 21 on my list, who is the character Tiger Lily. Now, Tiger Lily, of course, can be found in the 1953 Disney animated film Peter Pan. And Tiger Lily, again, much like Pocahontas and Moana, is the daughter of the chief of her village. And actually, in her animated film, she is referred to as a princess. As for the impact she has on her animated film, Tiger Lily is the daughter of the native chief, and while she does briefly find herself as a damsel in distress needing the help of Peter Pan, she eventually ends up aiding Peter Pan in his fight against Captain Hook. As for her royal status, as we discussed, she is indeed the daughter of the chief of the indigenous tribe in Neverland. And so within her tribe, she is indeed considered a princess. I like Tiger Lily. I think she is iconic in her own right. However, what I will say, she just doesn't have a ton to do in her film. But I will say, regardless of this, she is still a princess. And she is created by Disney. So she could have technically been the third official Disney princess. But I think it is understandable as to why the decision was made to not include her, seeing as she doesn't really do a lot. And I think she has one line in her animated film, which is, yeah, that. But regardless, I really like her. I think the energy that she personally adds to her movie is very positive. She very much has a very sweet and friendly energy, but she also adds a little bit of drama as she tends to flirt with Peter, which Wendy definitely doesn't like. I don't know. Overall, I think Tiger Lily's presence in her movie definitely positively affects the film, and I wish she got a little bit more credit for all that she does in her film. Although I will say it is always nice to see her whenever we fly by in Peter Pan's flight in Disney. But next, friends, we're gonna move on up to number 20 on my list. At number 20, is Prince Ralphie. Now, I can already hear you typing in the comments, Disney Nikki, who is Prince Ralphie? Well, while he is technically not named in his original animated film, Prince Ralphie is the little brother to Prince Naveen. So obviously, with that being said, Prince Ralphie can be found in The Princess and the Frog, which released in the year 2009. And as for his impact on the film, well, We kind of don't really know that he exists throughout the whole plot of this movie, except for the very end, when both families of Princess Tiana and Prince Naveen come together, and we finally get to see Prince Naveen's parents and his little brother, as little Prince Ralphie shares a very cute dance with Miss Charlotte LaBeouf. But as for his royal status, he is indeed the son of the King and Queen of Maldonia, and so while he is not first in line for the throne, as that title would go to his older brother, Prince Naveen, Prince Ralphie does indeed fit the royal status. I don't know, I think this character is so unbelievably cute, and I feel like we got sort of a little bit more rounded view of this character once Tiana's Bayou Adventure opened up, as Prince Ralphie got a brand new beautiful animatronic that plays gorgeous music alongside his older brother and Princess Tiana. I think Ralphie adds a ton of cute energy not only to his original animated film, but also to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And I think if the Princess and the Frog plotline is ever expanded in the future, either with a sequel or with a TV series, I really do think that Prince Ralphie's plot should be expanded a little bit more. I mean, he's super cute and could serve as a really adorable sidekick to our main cast. And even though he is the little brother of an iconic Disney prince, I often feel like he is a forgotten Disney prince, and so he's absolutely gonna make it onto today's list. But next, friends, we're gonna move on up to number 19 on my list. This one's a bit of a pain. At number 19 is Prince Ahmed. Now, Prince Ahmed, you might remember, can actually be seen in the Disney film Aladdin, which was released in the year 1992. And while he doesn't have a ton to do in his movie, he again definitely adds a lot of energy to the movie that I think is positive overall, even though it's not in terms of him. And even though he is in his movie very briefly, I feel like his energy in this film is quite important. Seeing as you might remember, for his impact, he is one of the potential suitors for Princess Jasmine. Prince Ahmed rides into Agrabah on his horse, and actually ends up being quite mean to a couple of peasant children, whom Aladdin has to defend in the streets. Prince Ahmed and Aladdin share some unkind words towards each other, showing off how truly arrogant and unkind Prince Ahmed is. It is relatively safe to say that Prince Ahmed and Princess Jasmine obviously do not make quite a good match. And, well, Prince Ahmed, you know, he gets the point in the end, if you know what I mean. All thanks to Raja, of course. But yes, in terms of today's video, Prince Ahmed definitely fits the bill, considering he is an official prince from a neighboring country to Agrabah. We're not really sure quite which one, however, he is indeed called Prince Ahmed in his movie, and so I think it's relatively safe to say that he is indeed a forgotten Disney prince. Although unlike other characters on this list, this one is a little bit more villainous, and so perhaps maybe it's better that he's on the forgotten side. But yes, as I said before, I actually do think Prince Ahmed's inclusion in his film is quite positive, seeing as he really helps to bring out the dichotomy between characters like him and Aladdin, and it really shows you as to why Princess Jasmine ends up choosing Aladdin in the end. But next we're gonna move on up to number 18 on my list, who is the character Milo Thatch. Now, Milo Thatch, of course, can be found in the Disney animated film Atlantis: The Lost Empire, which released in the year 2001. But as for the impact on his film, Milo Thatch goes on a great adventure with a very motley crew to discover the lost city of Atlantis, and eventually ends up helping to save its people. Now again, you might be thinking to yourself, Disney Nikki, why does Milo end up on the Forgotten Disney Princes list, seeing as this adventure has no real royal status? Well, yes, that is true, but let us not forget that he actually ends up, much like our friend Faline, in a relationship with someone of royal status, and so, therefore, he's going to be included on today's list because of my conditions. And as we know, Milo is the love interest to Kida in this animated film, and so by association of romance, he is indeed considered to be of royal status. And although I have talked about Milo in the past before and have mentioned that he's not really one of my favorite animated characters personally, I do think there is definitely room to argue that he is a forgotten royal member of Disney's canon, seeing as he is a human character who could realistically be translated into the Disney parks, and by his relationship status, he is indeed associated directly with royalty. I personally believe that it is the fact that this movie was not one of the most beloved in the Disney community that really makes Milo go the way of the forgotten. Is it a shame? Yes, because I do think Milo has quite a lot of good character qualities, but overall not enough to make him rank any higher than number 18 on my list today. But next we're going to move on up to number 17 on my list, and we're going to bring back some Enchanted energy. At number 17 is Prince Edward. Now, Prince Edward, as we just said, can be found in Disney's Enchanted, which was released in the year 2007, and also in the movie's sequel, Disenchanted. And this character is comedic gold. As for the impact he has on his movie, Prince Edward is initially going to be married to Giselle. However, throughout the plot of this movie, he eventually finds love in the character of Nancy Tremaine, who we talked about earlier on today's list. As for his royal status, he is indeed a prince, and seemingly so by birth, as he is the Prince of Andalasia. As we said earlier with Nancy, it is through their relationship that Nancy ends up becoming the Princess of Andalasia. And while I do love both Nancy and Edward, I think Edward ranks quite a bit higher on my list today because he is just so silly of a character. He is quite obviously meant to be Disney's spoof on the stereotypical Disney prince, as he just sporadically bursts into song and is like the definition of like believing in love at first sight. The whole translation of bringing fairy tale elements into the real world just makes this character so quirky and adorable and so well-rounded. Yes, I really like Prince Edward, and while we've never gotten to see him in an official Disney park before, I do hold hope that that could happen one day, mostly because, well, we'll talk about that a little bit later on today's list. But yes, Prince Edward definitely belongs on this list, as I truly believe he is yet another of Disney's forgotten princes. Now next we're going to move on up to number 16 on my list. This is definitely a forgotten princess. At number 16 is Princess Amneris. Now, again, I can hear you saying in the comments, who is Princess Amneris? I've never heard of this character before. What movie does she come from? Well, that's probably why you've never heard of her. Princess Amneris actually comes from the Disney on-Broadway production of Aida. For those of you who haven't seen my ranking of Disney's Broadway musicals, Aida was actually Disney's first large-scale production that was put on that wasn't previously based on one of their original animated films. Aida was actually based on an opera. And in the most basic terms, Disney took the opera and like Disney-fied it, but like also in a very deep and complex way. And one of the three leading characters is Princess Amneris. As for her impact on this musical, Princess Amneris is actually the Princess of Egypt, as her father in this musical is the Pharaoh. She is initially intended to be in a relationship with Radames, however ends up supporting the love of Radames with another character that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on the list. But yes, as for her royal status, as we discussed, she is the daughter of the Pharaoh and therefore the Princess of Egypt. In terms of my ranking list today, I don't think there is anybody more perfect to make it on today's list, as Princess Amneris is technically a Disney character who is a princess who is very much forgotten. In fact, I don't think a lot of people know about her to begin with, seeing as Disney's Aida on Broadway really only ran for a certain amount of time, and we really only have the cast recording to go off of. Regardless, actress Sherry Renee Scott did a wonderful job with this role. Definitely recommend taking a listen to the original Broadway cast recording, and maybe getting to experience a little bit of Princess Amneris. Next, we're gonna move on up to number 15 on my list, who is a trio of forgotten princesses. At number 15 is May, Ting Ting, and Sue. Now, these adorable princesses can be found in the Disney animated film Mulan 2, which released in the year 2004. And as for the impact that these three princesses have on their story, Mei, Tingting, and Sue are 3 princesses who are all meant to marry for political alliances. However, they ultimately choose to go against this will and choose to marry for love. As for their royal statuses, they are indeed princesses of China, as they are all daughters of the Emperor of China. I think these 3 characters are so wonderfully spirited, and again, for 3 characters that are very well-rounded, they do tend to be forgotten in Disney's canon. Again, being from an animated sequel, they couldn't necessarily make Disney princess status. However, I do think there is a lot to be said in these 3 characters. They're very strong and always follow their heart throughout their film. And so I definitely wanted to mention all 3 ladies on today's list. Next, we're gonna move on up to number 14 on my list, who is Vanellope von Schweetz. Now, Vanellope von Schweetz can be found in the Disney animated film Wreck-It Ralph, which was released in the year 2012. And as for the impact she has on her movie, in her film, Vanellope is a glitch within her game Sugar Rush. However, through the plot of the film, and spoiler alert, she eventually ends up realizing that she is in fact the princess of Sugar Rush. As for her royal status, she is indeed the Princess of Sugar Rush. It is in her coding. However, at the very end of her movie, she does end up deciding that she would rather be the president of Sugar Rush. I think Vanellope is a wonderfully spirited character. She is so wacky and zany. I love her character design, and I think she has a lot of really great and strong qualities. And again, while yes, technically a princess, I do feel like she often gets forgotten. Although I will say it was absolutely adorable getting to see her iconic scene with the official Disney princesses in Wreck-It Ralph 2. And if I'm just being honest with you, it's probably the scene with the official Disney princesses that lands her much more towards the middle of today's list. But next we're gonna move on up to number 13 on my list. Number 13 is one I really, really like. At number 13 is Princess Eilonwy. Now, definitely a forgotten Disney princess, Princess Eilonwy can be found in Disney's animated film, The Black Cauldron, which was released in the year 1985. As for the impact that she has on her animated film, Princess Eilonwy is one of the core members of Taran's gang who ends up helping to defeat the Horned King. She initially begins as a damsel in distress trapped in the castle of the Horned King, however, very quickly proves herself a true hero. As for her royal status, she is indeed a princess by birth, although her kingdom is not heavily explored in the original animated film. It's just stated that she's a princess. As for this character, in my opinion, I love Princess Eilonwy. She is absolutely a forgotten Disney princess, considering she's literally named a princess in an official Disney animated movie. And I would venture to guess that a lot of Disney fans probably haven't even heard of her. I definitely think Princess Eilonwy is an unsung hero in her own animated film and deserves significantly more recognition within the Disney community. And I honestly think a big reason as to why I like her so much is that so many people forget her. But regardless, she lives on rent-free in my head, so you know what? She's gonna go at the midpoint of today's list. With that, we're gonna move on up to number 12 on my list, a character that I said we were gonna talk about. At number 12, is the character Bambi. Now, Bambi, of course, comes from the 1942 animated film Bambi, and Bambi is the adorable little protagonist who is a deer. Now, as for the impact he has on his story, Bambi is the protagonist of his film, and we follow along on his adventure as he learns to navigate the forest after the loss of his mother. We see him grow up from a very young fawn, eventually becoming the Prince of the Forest. And speaking of, as for his royal status, he is indeed the son of the great Prince of the Forest, and therefore he is considered royalty within the animal kingdom. And so yes, not only Bambi having the prince status, but also eventually end up being in a relationship with Feline, eventually will make her the Princess of the Forest. In sitting down to compile today's list, I definitely wanted to include both Bambi and Feline on the list, considering I really do think that the majority of people forget that he technically is royalty. Even though he's not necessarily a direct ruler of a kingdom with subjects, he is in fact of royal status within the forest. A lot of his forest friends often look up to him as a symbol. And while Bambi and Feline are nowhere near just symbols in their movie, as they are very well-rounded characters, I often do think that people forget that they're royalty. When talking about the movie Bambi, I feel like the main takeaways are often the tragic loss of his mother and also the fact that it's a movie with just a bunch of animals. And so yes, for the reason that so many people forget that Bambi is indeed the son of the great prince, I did want to include him on today's list and in the top half, considering he's really adorable. And this movie makes me cry. And he is indeed a prince. So you know what, we're gonna combine all of those reasons together, and that's why he's gonna place where he does on today's list. Ooh, next we're gonna move on up to number 11 on my list. This one is definitely an interesting one to talk about. At number 11 is Tinkerbell. Yes, you heard me correctly. Tinkerbell from Disney's Peter Pan, which was released in the year 1953. Now let's first start off with the impact that she has on her movie, because it's quite a big one. Tinkerbell is Peter Pan's loyal companion throughout all of his adventures through Neverland. She and Peter often help the darling children to navigate their way through Neverland and also to get them safely home at the end. But once again, I hear you saying, Disney Nikki, where's the royalty? The royalty, is it in the room with us? Well, if we're talking specifically about her Disney animated movie, Tinkerbell is a prominent figure within Neverland, and so she holds significant influence and is often treated like royalty. However, there is no official royal status symbol on this little fairy in her movie. And so why is she on my ranking of forgotten Disney princes and princesses? Well, friends, when the official Disney princess lineup was originally created, Tinkerbell was an official member. It was a little bit of time into the brand's creation that certain members were looked at twice, and Tinkerbell was indeed one of them. Seeing as she technically wasn't a princess in her movie and really didn't fit in with a lot of the other princesses, considering the majority of them were very human size and Tinkerbell was yay big, her membership was thought over and officially rescinded in favor of having her be the leader of the Disney Fairies brand. So yes, Tinkerbell was at one point an official Disney princess. However, her membership to the brand was later removed, and it was then that she was named the leader of the Disney Fairies brand. And even though Tinkerbell herself is not a princess, I do think she fits very heavily into the Disney heroines category, as she is quite heroic within her movie. And so if you want to hear me talk about her even more, you can check out my ranking of Disney heroines video. But with that, friends, we have reached the top 10 of today's list. I am so excited to get into these characters. They are all so wonderful, and I can't wait to share my top 10 with you. If you have any guesses as to who you think is going to make it, make sure to drop your guesses down below. With that, we're going to start off my top 10 with number 10, who is Jane Porter. Now we're starting off my top 10 with yet another character who doesn't seem to be royal. Let's get into why she's here. Now, Jane Porter, of course, comes from the 1999 Disney animated film Tarzan, and she is a very prominent character within her story. Seeing as for her impact, Jane helps to bridge the gap between the humans and the gorillas, as she and Tarzan fall in love and eventually bridge that gap. And as for her royal status, Jane is not royal by birth, and although it is argued that she becomes either princess or queen of the jungle when she ends up in a relationship with Tarzan, that's not really what I'm going after, and not the reason why she ended up on today's list. The reason why she makes it onto today's list is for a very similar reason to our friend Tinkerbell, as Jane at one point was also an official Disney princess. However, her membership was later rescinded upon looking back at all of the members. When lining up all of the official Disney princesses next to each other, Disney wanted to make sure that the characters were different enough not only in their emotional side, but also physically. And because Jane was so close in character design with another official princess, like of real princess status, Jane was later removed. So unfortunately, even though Jane is a wonderful character and I truly love how deep she is in her film, unfortunately her brown hair and her yellow dress were just unfortunately a little bit too close to Princess Belle. And with no official royal title, she unfortunately didn't stand a chance in this royal showdown. And while I do agree that I don't really see how she fits into the Disney princess lineup, I do think she is a wonderful character deserving of recognition. And so yes, I have no problem including her in my ranking of forgotten princesses. Next, we move on up to number 9 on my list, who is the character Giselle. Now, Giselle is also from the 2007 Disney film Enchanted. And as for her impact on her film, Giselle is indeed the protagonist of Enchanted. She starts off as a typical fairy tale princess, being from an animated world of Andalasia, but later comes to the real world and learns all about our customs and how love works in our world, and eventually falls in love with a human. As for her royal status, Giselle was meant to become a princess, as she was originally intended to marry Prince Edward. However, she ended up deciding to marry for true love instead. Now, as for why she ranks on today's list, considering she also technically doesn't have royal status, while Giselle never ended up as an official Disney princess, she was very heavily considered for the role of official Disney princess. I mean, in every way, shape, and form, she really does fit the bill. Well, the reason that she wasn't included is that Amy Adams is so directly tied to the real-life manifestation of Giselle, well, it would be a little difficult helping to bring Giselle to life in the Disney parks. And so, unfortunately, Giselle did not end up making it into the official Disney princess lineup. However, the reason she makes it on today's list is that she was very heavily considered. And I will say, kind of cool, Giselle has actually appeared in the Disney parks before for, I believe it was a Sweethearts Night? I could be wrong, don't quote me on that. But that is also the reason that I have very high hopes that we possibly could also one day see Edward and Nancy appear in the parks as well. I really love Giselle. I also talked about her in my ranking of Disney heroines, but yeah, I love this character. Absolutely had to make it into my top 10 today. Next, we move on up to number 8 on my list. Who is the character? Nala. And you know what, while we're at it, let's move on up to number 7 as well. Who is the character Simba? Now, Simba and Nala can both be found in 1994's animated film The Lion King, as well as the Broadway production of Disney's The Lion King. As for the impact these two lions have in their movie, Simba is the protagonist of this film, and he must reclaim his rightful place as king after his father passes at the hand of his evil uncle. Nala ends up as the eventual love interest to Simba, as she helps to encourage him to reclaim his role. And yes, as for their royal statuses, Simba actually does start off his animated film as a prince, however, eventually ends up stepping into his father's place as the king, and seeing as, well, Nala is his love interest, that would have made her a princess turned queen. So yes, at one point or another, Simba and Nala were the prince and princess of the Pride Lands. And again, I love both of these characters so much, and I feel like they very much go forgotten considering they are animal characters, and so can't really officially be brought into the Disney princess lineup. Well, considering it would be a little tough to meet a lion in the parks. But regardless, I love both of these characters so much. I really do like The Lion King quite a bit, and I really do think that Simba and Nala go down as a forgotten prince and princess within the Disney community. I think they deserve more recognition for their royal titles. But with that, friends, we're gonna move on up to number 6 on my list. Who's the character? Kida. Now, Kida also comes from the Disney animated film Atlantis: The Lost Empire, which was released in the year 2001. And as for her impact on the film, Kida comes from the lost city of Atlantis and actually holds quite a high status in the kingdom. It is through all of her actions that her and Milo Thatch are both able to help restore and preserve all of Atlantis's culture. And as for her royal status, she is indeed the daughter of the King of Atlantis. And while I don't want to spoil too much, she does start off her Disney animated film as a princess of Atlantis, but later ends up as the queen. And well, I know we've already talked about Milo Thatch, but considering he ends up as the love interest of Princess Kida, I think it's relatively safe to say that Milo and Kida definitely go down as a forgotten Disney prince and Disney princess. Ooh, but with that, friends, we've reached number 5. At number 5 on my list is the character Esmeralda. Now, Esmeralda, of course, comes from the iconic Disney animated film The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which was released in the year 1996. As for her impact on the film, Esmeralda is incredibly kind-hearted and seeks out justice for her people. She befriends Quasimodo and eventually ends up as the love interest to Phoebus. Now, once again, you might be wondering, where is the royal status in this situation? While Esmeralda does technically have no royal status in her film, she is a very prominent figure within her Romani group. Well, the reason she ranks on today's list is that She was indeed at one point an official member of the Disney Princess lineup. Again, a character that was very much integrated into the brand, however, eventually had that membership rescinded. She very much feels like a character that just belongs in that Disney Princess lineup, especially considering that a character like Mulan, who also doesn't really have royal status, but that has very strong acts of heroism, very much belongs to that group. I feel like Esmeralda definitely belongs as well. And I would even go as far to say that she is indeed a snubbed member of the Disney Princess lineup. There is plenty of love for her here on my channel, so you know what? We're gonna keep the love for Esmeralda very strong here. Next, we're gonna move on up to number 4 on my list, who is the absolutely iconic Disney character, Charlotte LaBeouf. Now, Charlotte LaBeouf also comes from the 2009 Disney animated film, The Princess and the Frog. And as for her impact on the film, Charlotte is Tiana's best friend. While Charlotte dreams of one day marrying a prince, she ultimately does everything she can to help Tiana's dream come true. As for her royal status, well, technically she's not born royal. Her father is very wealthy and influential in the town of New Orleans. And when it comes time for the big Mardi Gras celebration, well, Big Daddy LaBeouf is named the King of the Mardi Gras. And so, in the most technical of terms, Charlotte herself is indeed the Princess of the Mardi Gras. I love Charlotte LaBeouf. I think she is such a wonderful friend and such a sweet character. While yes, very wacky and zany at certain times, she comes with so much character and a lot of arc. And when talking about forgotten princes and princesses, Charlotte does indeed hold the status of princess at one point in her film. And so I think it is safe to say that Charlotte deserves significantly more recognition, not only for her role within The Princess and the Frog, but also as a Disney princess. Next, we're gonna move on up to number 3 on my list, and we're very briefly gonna return to the Broadway stage. At number 3 is Princess Aida. Now, once again, while Princess Aida doesn't come from a Disney animated film, she could be seen in Disney on Broadway's production of Aida. As for the impact that she has on her story, Aida is a Nubian princess who is captured by the Egyptians. She ends up falling in love with the captain of the guard of the Egyptian soldiers, who is Radames. Aida, while falling in love with the enemy, also intends to free her people from the people of Egypt. As for her royal status, she is indeed a princess by birth of Nubia. And yes, once again, while Disney on Broadway's production of Aida is not necessarily the most well-known within the Disney canon, I really, really love this show. I really love the characters in this musical. And I truly think the two leading ladies who both portray princesses in a Disney production definitely go forgotten. They're both wonderful characters, and I wish so many more people knew about them. Yes, I absolutely had to include Aida very high on today's list because I love this character. She is so brave and determined to free her people. And she's also extremely vocally impressive. Like, no word of a lie, on the cast recording, her vocals definitely rival Elsa's. It's crazy, crazy good. Yes, I love Princess Aida, and there was absolutely no way that she was going to be left out of my top 3 on today's list. With that, friends, we've reached number 2 on my list, and I'm going to do something that I've never done in one of my ranking videos before. I'm going to talk about number 2 and number 1 at the same time, because this royal couple is everything to me. At number 2 on my list is the character Megara, and at number 1 is the character Hercules. Now, Hercules and Megara both come from the iconic 1997 Disney animated film Hercules. And as for their impact on the story, Hercules is indeed the protagonist of this film, and he is on a journey to prove himself a true hero, so that way he can once again reclaim a position amongst the gods. And as for Megara's impact, Megara actually initially works for Hades, who is the villain of the story. However, when she eventually falls in love with Hercules, she attempts to aid him in his journey, even to the point of sacrificing herself to save him. I love these two. They are absolutely a power couple, and they are forgotten Disney royalty. Let's talk about why. For their royal status, Hercules is actually the son of Zeus, who is the king of the gods. And being the king of the gods, that would indeed make Hercules the prince of the gods. And I think you can see how this is going. Since Hercules and Megara are love interests in the Disney animated film, that would essentially make Megara the princess of the gods. And so yes, these two wonderful characters are absolutely 100% left out of the official Disney Princess lineup and the Disney Princes. And so this is a personal frustration that that I have felt for a very long time because I love both of these characters so, so much. They are definitely two of my favorites out of the Disney canon, and I would love to see them have so much more limelight and so much more stage time within the Disney fandom, as they are two of like the most well-rounded, well thought out, and very deep characters to come from a Disney animated film. I really, really love how these two characters operate individually, but also how their relationship comes together. They evenly balance each other out throughout the entire film, both prove themselves true heroes, and honestly, are a really, really beautiful couple who also have royal status. And so, I guess you and I are just going to have to deal with the fact that they are not official Disney princes and princesses, but they can be on this channel if we want them to be. No, I am totally kidding, but that is why, my friends, that Hercules and Meg rank at number 1 and number 2 on my list of forgotten Disney princes and princesses. Whew, but with that, friends, we have talked about 25 of Disney's forgotten princes and princesses. Thank you so much for joining me today. I had so much fun talking about all of these forgotten princes and princesses. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below so that way you never miss out on any future magic from me. And likewise, if you'd like to find me on any of my other social medias, my handle is at Nicky Marra with 2 Y's and 2 R's. And you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat for even more magic. I want to say thank you again so much for all of the love that I've been getting on these videos. I'm having so much fun making them. And if this happens to be the first video you've ever watched of mine, then I'm going to link an entire playlist up above to all of my Disney rankings so that way you can come discover all of my personal Disney favorites. This playlist spans a lot. It goes from Disney animated characters to Disney movies to Disney on Broadway to the Disney parks. There is truly a ton of fun in this playlist, so make sure to check it out. But with that, friends, I'll once again say thank you so much for watching. Stay magical, and until next week, I'll see you all real soon.